The following presentation was recorded at the 2011 SouthEast LinuxFest in Spartanburg, South Carolina. It is licensed under a Creative Commons license. For more information about the SouthEast LinuxFest, visit www.southeastlinuxfest.org. The SouthEast LinuxFest would like to thank the following Diamond and Platinum sponsors in 2011 for helping make these videos possible.
About this conference you're at. My friend says, yes? Yeah, we'd like to know a little bit more about this unisex conference that you're at. So self is a lot easier, okay? Yeah. Of course, there'll probably be some people come along and it's all about self, you know. You should be looking to your duty to God, okay? I just thought I'd bring that out. This is the pre-talk mumble I do from time to time while I'm setting things up. Oh my God. See, there it is again, the beam of light, you know. Whoa, is that annoying? Look the other way. Tux, wait a minute, okay. No, Tux. Wow. That's really not going to be on the whole time, is it? Yeah, it probably is, isn't it? I was telling the guy who was up here helping me with my notebook that this is the first new notebook I purchased in about 6 years. My previous one was an IBM ThinkPad X31, and that just did me a very, very good service for 6 years. As I went around the world, it was dropped and bumped and, all that type of stuff. It was like a tank. But as a lot of other things over time, it kind of lost some steam. And I'm working on a new project, which I'll tell you a little bit about today, but very little bit, called Project Kala. And it relies heavily on virtualization. And of course, 7 years ago, the X31 didn't support virtualization that much, so I recently bought this new notebook, also a ThinkPad. This isn't an advertisement for them, just explaining. That is a W510, and it has 7 cores and 8 gigabytes of main memory and a ½ terabyte disk drive in it. And I call it SMOG, after the fire-breathing dragon of Tolkien, because when this thing gets going, the fan comes on, it sounds like a 747 plane taking off, But it'll allow me to do the simulations and stuff I need to do for this project. So I'm here setting up SMOG. Let's see. We've still got about 2 minutes left. I was actually thinking about starting off my talk with a rant. And I can do the rant right now while we're still waiting for people to come in. Well, I'll do the rant, and then you can introduce me, and then I'll go on with the talk. Okay? Here's the rant. This is a phone. It's supposed to be easy to use. I remember when they were easy to use, okay? But the other day, my phone mysteriously stopped working. And so I had to find the website that was going to help me fix my phone. And of course, on that website, it had a telephone number that you could call, which I couldn't do because my phone didn't work. So I had to find another phone to call them, and I called them up, and they said, the first thing they said to me, "Are you calling from the phone that you're experiencing problems with?" "No, you idiot, because it's broken." So I finally get this very nice person on the line who you can tell is reading this script, okay? "Hello, we're sorry you're having problems." Turn page. Would you turn off your phone and take the SIM card out of it? "No, I don't think that's the problem. You see, take the SIM card out of it and rubber pencil eraser." "No, I don't think that's the problem because I can see." "No, don't, I'm reading from my script, sir. Please don't interrupt me." Okay. 2 hours later, we finally got the end of the script. I said, I could see the carrier name. I used to work for a telephone company. I have a master's degree in computer science. I have 40 years of experience in the field. I've written the operating system that goes on your stinking phone. And I can see that the carrier's name is on there, AT&T. That means the radio is working. That means the SIM card is working. That means all that stuff is working. Now, I asked you 2 hours ago if you would just check on my account to see if for some reason you have turned off my account. Would you please do that? Oh, sir. Somebody called us and told us that that you had lost your phone and we turned off your service. I see. Would you turn it back on? Well, sir, we can't do that for you because we don't know that you're you. So you have to travel 2 hours north to the AT&T store and show them ID so that we can give you a new SIM card because we think we've damaged your old one. So I had to do that. And then when I got up there, I said to them, let me get this straight. Somebody called you up, said they were me, said that they had lost the phone, and you turned off my service. And now I've been without service for 2 days, and I had to travel up here at $4 a gallon for gasoline and my time and everything else. What compensation are you going to get me for that? Oh, sir, we don't have anything in our terms of service to compensate you for your time lost. So this is my rant, and for the rest of my talk, I'm going to prove to you that we as a society have been going downhill in terms of service, and I'd like to propose something to change that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the organizers so that they can properly introduce me and tell me who I am. Oh, he wants to borrow one of my mics. I don't know. This could get intimate here.
This is good film right here. Welcome to the 3rd annual Southeast Linux Fest. This is the best moment of my life. Thanks for coming. I'm going to be very, very brief. Just some quick errata. We've got a schedule change. They're out here on these podiums. Brian Jons is going to be replaced by Mark Mickelson as a speaker, and Jeff Casimir is being replaced by Steve Smoogen. And we've had a kidnapping. Cloud.com, one of our sponsors, has provided a 5-foot penguin that was in the hall yesterday, and it's missing now. And they'd like to offer a reward with a twist. If whoever took the penguin can return it for the duration of the conference, they will reward you with drink tickets and let you keep it and take it home. So we would like that back. Anyway, without further looking awkward up here next to Mad Dog, this is the godfather of Linux. This is Jon Maddog.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to be talking about free software and the creation of jobs. Now, I'm going to warn you folks that this is a highly opinionated talk. The other day I was sitting in the speaker's room and I came out with a number and somebody said, "Where'd you get that number from?" Well, I gave them a reasonable approximation of how I got the number and stuff like that. But I'm not going to have all the facts and figures and stuff in this talk that I have. So anybody out there that wants to meet me afterwards and arm wrestle about it, you're welcome to. The faint of heart, you're welcome to leave. And the second thing is that there's no magic here. There never is. The magic is gone the days of Harry Potter. I think somebody is dead, but it's just a lot of hard work, and we all know what that is. So don't look for a magical thing that I'm going to say, and you're all going to go off and start making money with free software. And a lot of you are going to say, "I already knew that," and that's okay. Because my job isn't necessarily to teach you something completely new. My job is to remind you of the stuff you may already know and to bring it from the back of your head to the front of your head. So that when you go back to your boss or your employees or something like that, you might be able to use a little quip that I've told you or something to illustrate the points I'm going to make. Okay? Now, I've been around for a long time. I came into the commercial computing industry in 1969, I read a book called Programming the IBM 1130 in Fortran, and that's how I learned programming in 1969, and practicing on it, of course. And I've been a wide variety of different jobs. I've been a programmer, I've been a systems administrator, but most importantly, I've been a customer who's been sitting there waiting for that bug fix or that enhancement or whatever to come from the people going to create it. And I've been a vendor who's been trying to get that bug fix or enhancement out to that particular customer. So I've been on both sides of it, and I know that there's pain on both sides. And my little cartoon at the bottom, if you can't quite read it, that's a Dilbert cartoon. It shows this guy with a really big head that says, I have all the job requirements you're looking for. I have an IQ of 300, several Nobel Prizes, and 2 centuries of Unix experience, thanks to the time machine and the immortality drug that I invented. And Catbert, the evil HR director, says, that's a lot of words for too old. So I want to play a little game here, okay? I want to play a little game with you folks. I'm going to take the people at these 2 tables. Will you stand up, please? It's okay. I'm not going to hit you with anything. No paintball contest or anything. Just stand up. Yeah, you with the fly swatter. Thanks. These are people at a little company. Let's say these are people at a little company, and their little company has been using all free software, you know, Linux and OpenOffice and stuff to do their work. Now, you just hired a new CTO, and they came in and they're a real Microsoft fan, okay? And they realize, they say, hey, we don't want to use all this open source stuff anymore. We want to use stuff that our customers use. So we're going to go out and we're going to buy a whole series of Microsoft licenses for the computers that we have. But you know something? We don't really have the money in the budget to do that, so we're going to have to lay you off. So would you sit down? Thank you, sir. You sit down. And oh, by the way, that open office stuff, that's not that good, you know. We want to have real Microsoft Office in here. So, sir, would you please sit down? Thank you. And we want to have Oracle in here, not that Postgres SQL thing. Now, when I started into computers, I had a master's degree in computer science, what was computer science of the day. And the person sitting next to me also had a master's degree, or maybe even a PhD in computer science. So if I had a question, we could talk it between us. If we couldn't figure it out, we turned to the person to the left of me, who also had a master's or PhD in computer science. But then after a while, all of the support help started to be located in the computer center, which was a couple floors down. And then all of a sudden, it started to come from the supplier, because the supplier was the one who created the programs. They were the ones who actually knew how the programs worked. You had to call them up to get your support. And then, because the suppliers felt that that was inefficient, they started to create telecenters and levels of support. And so you now had to call these people to get your answers to your questions. And then finally, all of this was too expensive, so they decided to offshore it and send it other places, even further away. Now, this was all being done because of 2 groups of people. Number one, the people that were producing the support, because they wanted to make it more efficient, lower cost, and everything else. And the people who were buying the support, who is not the end user. The people buying support were typically purchasing agents who never had to call that telephone number. They never had to sit on the telephone for hours at a time. They never had to worry about where they're going to get the second phone to call about the first one being broken. They didn't worry about that because they didn't use it. They were just looking for the cheapest possible support to say that we had support. And so the end user, who is the only person who is actually going to suffer or benefit from this, was out of the picture. Now, how many of you, the other thing about the local support, the people that were still local, is that they really couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't change the binary application. They could offer workarounds a little bit. They could say, I can help you try and integrate this binary package into the rest of the software you have, but they couldn't change the actual program. They could offer education, they could offer training, but they couldn't change the actual program. So again, I'm going to go back to the period of 1980, where I actually purchased a piece of binary-only software. Oh, I've stepped out of the light. I purchased a piece of binary-only software. It came on 2 8-inch floppy disks. And I purchased it from a little company that was very close to my house. And I said, and I was using it, and one day I found a problem. So I called up the company. This is a true story. I called up the company. I got the president of the company on the telephone. I says, hi, I'm using your software. I paid $1,000 for it. I found a problem. I explained what the problem was. He says, yeah, I know what that is. And he could say that because he was the chief programmer of the company. He says, I think we could probably fix that, and we could QA it this afternoon. And he could say that because he was the head of QA. And he says, if we do that, we could probably ship it out and get it to you tomorrow morning. He could say that because he was the head shipping clerk. And sure enough, the next day, I got my 2-inch floppy disk back in the mail, and it worked. And that was great. Now, this company at that time had about 1,000 customers. And if each customer had 2 problem reports, that's 2,000 pieces of paper coming in to the 100 engineers that they had. And that's 20 reports that each engineer has to work on over the course of the year. No problem. Easy to do. However, it's now the year 2011. The little company still exists. They've grown. They have about 200 engineers. You don't pay $1,000 for their product anymore. You pay $29.95 at CompuHut. And they have 4.5 million customers. And now when you call them up, you no longer get the president on the line, nor do you get the chief programmer, nor do you get the shipping clerk. What you get is, please press button number 1 for sales, button number 2 for support. That's if you can find a telephone number at all on the website. And then when you press 2, you get music, music. And after about 20 minutes, you get disconnected. And it's not because these companies don't want to give you good service. It's because they can't give you good service. Okay? Now, sometimes I talk to thousands. This is a pretty good-sized crowd here. Sometimes I talk to thousands of business people in a room at some place like, Comdex when it was still in existence and stuff. And I'll do it here. How many of you have ever had a problem with closed source proprietary software? Now, how many of you have actually taken the time to turn in a well-worded bug report? Now, I'll bet that most of you are business people, and you've taken the time to do that because you paid money for that software, and you actually expect it to work properly. Foolish people. Now, if you people that took the time to turn in that well-worded bug report, how many of you have actually gotten back, I want you to do this seriously now, how many of you have actually gotten back either a bug fix or a well-worded workaround for that? Oh, that's pretty disgusting, isn't it? You paid money for it, you bought the service, and that's the type of service you get. I did this one time in a really large room with a lot of people at a big conference, and one person raised their hand at the end. Only one person out of the audience said, Mr. Gates, you don't count. Now I'm going to ask one more question. How many of you people have actually had to change the way that you do your business because the software won't let you do your business the way you want it to? And how much did that cost you? That's the question. Okay? You'll see, there's a reason for this madness here. Now, when production software and production support started, the number of desktop computers was relatively few to what we have today. The people that used them were typically executives or upper management who were using them to get reports and things like that. They had a fair degree of training in various things, and they would be sent for classes to get more training in these things because the desktop computers were $13,000, $15,000. And, you know, it was worthwhile to give them the training that they needed in these new things. Most of these people spoke one of the 50 major languages of the day, okay? Today, if you take a look at Ubuntu or one of the other major distributions, you'll find out they support over 200 different languages. And finally, the business methods tend to be the same because they were developed, business methods that were developed in North America, Western Europe, things like that. It's a little bit different if you're in the Swahili business environment. It doesn't quite fit. Today, there's 1.5 billion desktop computers. Any number of people might be using them, including my parents. My mother, who thinks that virus is something you treat with chicken soup. And then my father, who thinks that a backup is something you do with a car to put it in a parking place. And the hardware is becoming incredibly cheap. The operating system is becoming ever more sophisticated. But training? Well, we don't even talk about that. That's something you somehow pick up through osmosis. And in the Swahili language, the word download means to take something off the back of a truck and put it on the ground. This is the type of problem that we have today. I was a product manager for Digital Unix, and during one of our releases, I made up a list of 650 different product requirements that our customers had given us. We ranked them from most important to least important. Of course, to the customer, all of them were important. If you turned in the product requirement, your product requirement was the most important one of the whole group, but not the digital. Because to us, the most important one was the one that sold the most computers. In any case, I gave this to my team of engineers, 550 engineers, and said, how many of these can you do in the one-year release cycle we have? And they studied it for a month, and they came back and they said, we could do the top 50 and maybe one or two more underneath. I said, what about the other 600? They said, we'll do that in the next release. Now, if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you in New York City. Okay, or maybe 2 tall towers that are no longer there. Because in the next release, there was always more requirements that had to be done, more hardware that had to be supported, more standards that became crucial, and your product requirement went further down the list. And after a while, I stopped making a product requirement list any longer than 125 product requirements, because I knew the engineers would never even look at the ones further down. So here we are. This is the functionality gap. The bottom one is the functionality that's provided by closed source proprietary software. And the top one is the functionality that typically is needed by people that will never, ever appear. Or if it does appear, it's almost by accident. And this gap used to be, when the number of computers was small, the volume of the difference in the gap times the number of computers was relatively small. But as we increase the number of computers, as more and more and more computers are used, this is going into human time lost, which is becoming to be an astronomical number. How much money is being lost? Well, as I said, 1.5 billion desktop computers. Let's say that every single one of those computers causes a loss of perhaps 15 minutes of time by its user every day. It might be that the person comes in and finds out their computer was attacked by a virus. It could be that they have a lot of spam coming into their mailbox. It could be that they tried to install a new piece of software, they screwed up the whole thing, and now they have to reinstall the software again. It could be that they bought a new printer, they don't know how to put it together. Lots of different reasons that could cause this loss of time and effort during the day. Well, if you say that that 15 minutes is worth $5, that means that as a world economy, we're losing $7.5 billion every day. That's almost enough to fund some small war in some Far East country. But this is a world economy, it's a world number, not just the United States. Let's take a smaller and easier thing to get our heads around. You're somebody who's running a telecenter or some other type of knowledge-based company. You've got 300 people working for you, and they all have a desktop computer. They each lose that 15 minutes a day. It's like 9 people never showed up for work. They didn't call in sick. They didn't say, I'm taking vacation. They just didn't show up. And you, as a manager, would be ripshit about this. You'd be really upset that these people never showed up. But what if we took one of those people and trained them to be a really good support person? Somebody that would help people get rid of that spam. Some people that would help people get rid of those viruses, install the software for them, make the computer easier to use, make it so that all the person had to do was actually sit down and use the computer. Now, a lot of people say, that's why I buy Apple. It's easy to use, you know, that Apple controls everything from the software to the hardware. It's all integrated. I can use it all, and that's why I buy it. Well, that's true. But there's a few problems. Number one, if Apple doesn't make it, you can't buy it. And number two, you're highly dependent upon this one company called Apple. And if Steve Jobs doesn't believe that you should be doing your work that way, well, good luck. You know, hey, Steve, mind making a small change to iOS for me? Click. He keeps telling me I'm holding my phone wrong. That's why it didn't work. Not they turned off my service, I'm holding my phone wrong. Now, if you think these numbers are bad, it gets worse. Because with the 1.5 billion desktop computers today, that means that basically there's about 4.3 billion people who haven't selected their operating system yet. And these people really don't have a lot of the training and education we have. They really don't speak our languages. And the proprietary companies can't meet the needs of these people. The number of engineers they have is too few. The integration is too hard. And it's not profitable for them. In Rio de Janeiro, there was a small company that wanted to investigate the rainforest for new medicines, new materials and things like that. And they needed some software from a company in Canada that produced GIS software. And this software was incredibly expensive. Now, there's two types of proprietary software. There's expensive proprietary software, and there's incredibly expensive software. And this is the second one. $500,000 a copy. They needed 9 copies, $4.5 million. But they had the money. The problem was that they only spoke Portuguese. Can you imagine people in the world that can't speak English? It's incredible. These people must have been incredibly stupid, right? They're not speaking English. No, they weren't. They were incredibly smart. And so they went to the large company and said, please, for $4.5 million, can't you make a copy of your software in Portuguese? And the company said, no. It's not in our best business interest. Their best business interest, not the customer's best business interest. See the problem? That's the problem. Proprietary software takes the control away from you. You're not in control anymore. Some other company's in control. You're not in control. And so the little company went to a free software developer and they said, hey, do you think you can create the software we need? We don't need all the functionality, just need this little bit. Can you do this with open source software? And the person said, yes, I think I can. I'm going to use OpenGIS, Geographical Information Software, as an open source project to gather up the information. I'm going to use GNU Plot to make the maps that you need. I'm going to use Postgres SQL to store all the data, and Python to tie it all together. I'll make it prompt in Portuguese. It took them 3 months. He was paid $380,000 plus a monthly fee to keep the software up to date. Now, I don't know how much money you folks make, but I can't remember the last time I made $380,000 for 3 months' worth of work. And particularly in Brazil, this is a very good salary. But the reason I mention this is we're going to play another little game here. What is the value of this software? Now, some people would say the value of the software was $380,000 because that's what the developer was paid. How many of you agree with that? Some people would say the value was $4.5 million because that's how much they would have had to pay the large company if the large company had done the work and they'd gotten the software they would. How many people agree with that? The actual answer is the value of this software to the little company was infinite because without it, the little company couldn't exist. And so it's not the cost of the software that's important, folks. It is the value of the software. And we as an open source community have a very bad habit of concentrating on the cost instead of the value. Total cost of ownership is things like how much new hardware you're going to have to buy, how much new software you're going to have to buy, how much integration are you going to have to do, how much is that going to cost you, how much education are you going to have to do, how much is that going to cost you, what's it about the ongoing support, how much is that going to cost you. And remember, this is all being determined by that same person who's sitting there in the purchasing office who's never going to use the service at all. Okay? That's why it's a bad idea. Because enlightened TCO, enlightened total cost of ownership, is thinking about things like, what is the cost in the future of upgrading all of this stuff over time? What is the cost of having to track all these licenses? I know companies that have to have 2 or 3 people inside the company. Their sole job is to track licenses because they're afraid of having unlicensed software on one machine or another. What happens when you retire the hardware because you want to buy upgraded hardware for your engineers and stuff, and now you need to get rid of this hardware? Well, under the licenses of most closed source proprietary operating systems, you can't simply transfer the software. The person who's going to buy the machine has to buy new software for it, which may not even exist. How many of you have been able to buy a new copy of Microsoft Windows for an old 386 machine lately? Can't do it. 486. Can't do it, okay? You can get Linux for any one of these. And therefore, the machine still has a usefulness, still has a value. The backup and exchange of data is also an issue. It also has a cost. And finally, there's the concept of using the software for any reason or any purpose by any number of people on any hardware that you want to. All of these have hidden costs that drive up the total cost of ownership in proprietary software. The real thing you should be looking at, though, is the value of the software. Can you actually do business the way you want to? Can you actually do business better than your competitor by changing the software and making it actually work in a way that gives you an edge over your competitor? I tell a cute story about, and this is not a true story, but I think you'll see the value of it. I tell a little story about going down to a CompUSA store, and buying a CD off those cheap $5 racks. You've all seen them, buy the CD, it's filled with software. You put it on your computer system, you start the software up. It takes you an hour of the time to install it. $5 an hour of your time. That's the total cost of ownership. You start the software up, it does absolutely nothing. Total value is zero. You go back to the store, you buy another CD, take it home, you install it, hour of your time. Total cost, $5, hour of your time. But you start it up, and immediately your dog can let itself in and out of the house by itself. Your significant other comes home, kisses you on the cheek, goes into the kitchen, makes a fantastic dinner, comes outside, grabs you by the hand, takes you upstairs to bed, you make love the entire night. Believe me, at the age of 60, that alone is a miracle. Your children come home from school, they got straight A's, and the tax collector calls you up the next day and says, we found a mistake in your taxes and we owe you $200,000, and all of it is because of the software on that CD. I submit to you that that software is infinitely valuable to you, and you really don't care it costs you $5 and an hour of your time. This is a business problem. Now, one of the other problems we have in the industry today is people talk about commodity software. Software is a commodity. The operating system is unimportant. Nobody cares about it anymore. Let me tell you something. Go into your Windows system, remove the operating system, and see how many people care about it. Remove your Linux operating system, see how many people care about it. Okay? But let's go with this for a moment. Let's say it's a commodity. Well, let me tell you what a commodity is. A commodity is a can of corn. You go to the supermarket, there's 15 cans of corn, kernel corn, yellow kernel corn, sitting on the shelf. One's Food Club, one's Green Giant, one's Del Monte, one's generic, one has no label whatsoever, one is slightly dented. This is all cans of corn, all different prices. Now, you're standing in front of these cans of corn, and the guy from the supermarket comes over and says, can I help you? And you say, which cans of corn should I buy for my family? Can I mix this can of corn with this can of corn in the same pot, or do I have to have separate pots for them? Really, can you help me choose which one of these cans of corn I should be buying? And by this time, the person's motioning for the security guard to come over and throw you out of there because you are a kook. That's a can of corn. Just put it in a shopping cart. Pick the cheapest one. They're all canned by the same company. They're all growing in the same field. Okay? Now, this is different than a car. Because a car is not a can of corn. A car is not a commodity. You don't take a whole suitcase full of money down to the local car shop and say, whoop, 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 whoop. Here's my suitcase of money. Just give me any car on the lot. You don't do that unless you're Larry Ellison or Bill Gates, okay? And even they don't do it because they want to make sure the car is safe. They want to make sure it can tow their boat. Well, that lets out, there's no car that can tow Larry Ellison's boat. They want to make sure, all these things, because a car is not a commodity, even though every car has a gas pedal and a brake and a steering wheel. They're not a commodity. And the same thing is true about business. I have been in the industry for 40 years. I have never seen two business problems that were the same. They're always different. They're not commodities. But let's try. Here is my round business problem. I'm going to try and treat it with a square proprietary software solution. Oops. A little bit of round business problem showing through. That's okay. I'll go back to the computer store. I'll buy another piece of square software to help it out. Oh, it's not quite working, is it? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a large piece of software, Oracle Business, Google Apps. I'm going to buy something like that, and I'm going to stick it on there, and that's going to solve my entire problem. But the problem is, it's so big. What I'd really like to do is go in and throw away the parts I don't want, tailor it down, and make it fit my actual problem. But I can't do that because it's closed source. The solution has been taken away from me. In St. Petersburg, Russia, there is something known as a turbid testbed. Steam turbines are sent there to be put into a situation where you can actually test the efficiency of the turbine. There is 5 of these turbine testbeds around the world. 4 of them use closed source proprietary software. 1 of them in St. Petersburg uses open source. He uses Linux as the operating system, MySQL to store all the data that he gathers. He uses GNU-plot to plot out the results, Apache web server to distribute it to his customers. His customers are engineers who are designing the turbines scattered around the world and getting their information about the tests in real time over the internet. And every once in a while, his customers will say, this is great, I just need this tiny little change in the software. And they make the same request of the proprietary turbid testbed vendors. The proprietary people usually take about a month to make even the smallest change in the software. But my friend in St. Petersburg can typically make that change overnight. Who gets the better service? The people who are using the proprietary software or the people using the free software? But what is the value of that? What is the value to the person in St. Petersburg? Well, the person in St. Petersburg, he didn't have to pay for the proprietary software. He maintains it himself, which is something that takes time out of his schedule. But most importantly, the value to his customers is that they can get these changes that they need overnight. Saves them a month of waiting for this change. So this is why the changes and the costs are often subtle. It's not a direct money back on a particular return on investment or a particular cost. It may be that you, as a provider of services for other people, is the other people that are actually benefiting from it. Another great example of this is the Brazilian subway system. I met the chief of the Brazilian subway system at a free software event. And he said, we don't use a lot of Linux in our subway system. We use mostly Microsoft operating systems. But I have a lot of office workers, and he meant a lot of office workers, and every single one of them was using Microsoft Office. At the same time, the subway was very dirty, but I had no money in my budget to hire subway cleaners. I said, maybe I could use OpenOffice to write my letters, to do my spreadsheets. And so he switched to OpenOffice, which meant he saved all of the Microsoft Office royalties that he had to pay, and he was able to hire 350 subway cleaners. The subways became a lot cleaner. People started coming up to him and saying, the subways are a lot cleaner now. I'm going to start riding them, and not only that, but I'm going to have all my friends ride them. Subway ridership went up. Revenues went up. And he had even more money then to hire more subway cleaners. What he said to me was, in the 10 years that I've been running the Brazilian subways, not a single customer of mine has come up to me and said, thank you for using Microsoft Office to write your letters. Your letters look so beautiful. But they did come up to him and say, thank you for making the subways cleaner. So this is an example. And of my 6 people that we started at the beginning, that means that 5 of you could now stand back up. So here is the new old model of developing software. That it is a service model, which we are familiar with, in the free software space. We're paying for the services of copying and distributing the software. the services of getting the features in. But when you go to sell these features to your customers, don't talk about the cost. Talk about the value. Get them to understand that what they're paying for is something that is going to let them change their business to get an edge over their competitor. The software is now moving from something which is a pure expense to something which has strategic value. That's what you have to do. And you, don't be afraid of the word service, because a lot of people are. They think of service as people who flip hamburgers or sweep the streets or clean the subways, and there's nothing wrong with those jobs, it's just I don't want to do them. I think of what we do as the same way as service as a brain surgeon. A brain surgeon doesn't create a product. You don't end up with a second brain when they get finished. They fix the brain you've got. And yet you pay them a lot of money because they know where to make the incision. And you don't look for the brain surgeon who advertises in the paper and says, hire me, I do brain surgery cheap. Because your brain is very important to you. Well, for a business person, their business is more important than their brain. Trust them. Ask them. And they'll say, okay, yeah, take my brain, I don't care, but leave my business. Think about a lawyer, or don't think about a lawyer. Lawyers certainly don't produce anything, but we pay them a lot of money because we value their experience and their expertise. So you can do all of the things that people currently do with closed source legacy software. Think about it. All the people out there making money with Microsoft, 99.999% of them are making money with Microsoft because they're educating people on how to use it, they're installing it, they're integrating it, they're tuning it, they're training, they're doing all these things. You could do every single bit of this with free software. And you have an advantage over your closed source compatriots because they can never be as knowledgeable about the interior workings of Microsoft as you could be knowledgeable about the interior workings of free software. You could be as good or even better than the people that wrote that software in teaching about it and maintaining it. Because maybe the people that wrote the software are really good software engineers, but they always stare at their feet when they're talking. They have no personal skills. Or you have a better way of communicating ideas to the customer than they do. Their expertise is in writing software. Your expertise may be in helping the customer solve a problem with it. The only thing you can't do with free software is charge an outlandish price for it, because the mechanisms of free software tend to limit how much you can do that before somebody else says, well, I'll undercut you on that price. But you can certainly be one of the acknowledged experts on that piece of software and demand a good price for it, for your time. Now, here's some tips if you're thinking about going into the free software business, and I'm sure that we could probably have a BOF on some of these and have come up with others. But there's a lot of people who say, I want to be a free software support person, and they try and start their own company, work by themselves. This is okay. A lot of people do this, but it's really a lot of hard work. What I recommend is to form a cooperative. Get together with a group of like-minded people who perhaps have different expertises and form a cooperative. This allows your customers to deal with a company, because typically companies like to deal with companies. They're afraid that if you're a lone wolf, you might get hit by a truck, you may just get tired of doing free software, and they will be left in a lurch. But if they're dealing with a company as a cooperative, they say this might be around for a while. If you get tired of doing it or retire, somebody else will come in and take your place. Plus, in a cooperative, you can share expenses. You can hire a couple of salespeople to go out and do sales. You can share a legal person amongst, instead of having several legal people in different companies. So a cooperative is a good way of forming a business of selling support for free software. Study various business models of FOSS. Don't think that there's just one, because there's many of them. I'll go over a couple of them in a couple seconds. There's the pure service business model, where that's what you're doing, is selling pure service, or you can sell a service and product business model, where you tie together some piece of hardware as portion of this, and it's the hardware which you're selling and making a little bit of money off of that. Volume is not just a thing, it's the only thing. Volume, volume, volume. Advertise, get your name out there, look for volume. Everything you think about, it has to be volume. Volume is the key word. If you can come up with an idea or a plan that generates that volume, you're 99% of the way there. Talk to your educators and legislators. If you've done that already, talk to them again. Now, go to the Linux magazines, go to the corporate sites, find their Linux case studies. Make up a portfolio of theirs. Break them down so that they're under banking, retail, education, stuff like that. When you go to talk to a customer, bring these case studies up. If you're talking to a bank, you say, do you know that HSBC uses Linux? Do you know, or a smaller bank, do you know that the Digital Credit Union uses Linux? And explain why they chose it. Do not be a fanatic. Be pragmatic, okay? Remember that the customer really doesn't care about free software. What they care about is saving money and making money. If you talk to them first about that, you're 9/10 of the way there. It will be hard. That's why they call it work, but it can also be fun. I'm going to go over quickly two business models. A company in Nashua, New Hampshire had a huge proprietary closed source project, and they were expending a lot of engineering time in maintaining that. They did not have very much time to do innovation because they were spending so much time just supporting what they already had. They made the bulk of their software a free and open source project, gave it away for free, exposed all the source code, developed a community around that. And the community actually did all the work in maintaining it, porting it, and stuff. They refocused their engineers on tiny little modules that worked on top of the free software. They were able to target customers by watching who pulled their free software down. And if the customer was United States military, United States government, or General Motors, they would call them up and say, hi, we notice you're using our software. We'd like to sell you these tiny little proprietary modules that go on top of it. And they made more money than ever. A friend of mine bought Project.net, a closed source company. They were selling 2 copies of their software every month for about $2,000 a copy. He noticed that 60% of his customers bought a support contract. So he decided to open up the entire thing and give it away for free. 2,000 people a month copied his software down for free, but 60% of them bought a support contract, and he made more money than ever. These are ideas of different types of business models that you should go to. Of course, it's more than just free software. There's the free standards group, there's free culture, all of these things work together. I'm told I'm out of time. I just wanted to mention Project Cala briefly. Project Cala is a project I'm working for in Brazil. Yes, you read that first bullet correctly. If it works, I might be able to produce millions of new high-tech jobs inside of Brazil and millions more in Latin America, all in the private sector. No government money. And all these are going to be support jobs where each individual person providing the support is their own boss. They own the hardware, they own the software, they provide the services, they make the computers easier to use less electrical power, and all this is going to be open source. So thank you very much for coming. If you'd like to hear more about Project Kawa, I'll be around. We have a site, www.projectkawa.org. We're going to launch this July the 2nd in Brazil. And that's the site. Thank you very much.
Just wanted to thank you for coming, being our keynote, and thank you for everything you do for us and our community. Really, thank you.
Thank you. Along those lines, I'd like to make one last comment. A lot of times people will come up like you did and say that, but I want to point out that if you want to see the most important person in free software, when you get up tomorrow morning, you take a look in the mirror. Thank you.
What about this?
I can help with that. We have the same problem.
What would happen if we did this?
You gave me a good idea. Problem. How do you do that?
It's like this.
Well, I disagree.
Really? Who would have thought of that?
Let's put the word out.
As a service leader in cloud computing, all we do is hosted computing. To us, the cloud is just the next generation of hosting. And as someone who's been in the hosting industry for 12 years, we feel we're in a unique position to really help bring these two worlds together, these different sets of technologies, and to help companies embrace this new world and this great new tool that allows faster innovation. Not only is it about us being responsive and accountable, but it's about us doing more for you.
WebOS, an OS that works the way that you do. Across all your devices, HP Slate and WebOS. HP.